Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country, powered by Backcourt Marketing. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale after a victorious 5-0 week. Shane, we talked about it on last week's show.
You nailed it, Eric. And it doesn't
Every
happen
now and
often,
then
so
I
we
get
had
one
to
right.
we had to give you credit. I gave you your props online and all that. Don't expect it to happen again anytime soon. But I'm thrilled that you did. I mean,
Yes,
I didn't
thank
think they were going to go 5. I didn't think the men were going to go 3-0 and the women 2-0. I didn't think that both combined were going to happen. And lo and behold.
So, and also, Shane, not only did I say 5-0, but I said the toughest game of the bunch was going to be USC.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody thought I was crazy. And I had people like, you don't know what I had some guy on Twitter that was telling me he didn't know what I was talking about with USC or something like that after the UCLA game. I mean,
they're down 6 with 6 minutes left or something like that.
I'm like, I was concerned. That one, I was like, God, I don't want to be right here.
Well, it's amazing how quickly this team can score in bunches. And just like, I think other teams are like, what just happened, and that 10-0 run Arizona put on USC to take the lead, I think just befuddled USC. And then of course the ASU game, which I want to hear about, because I know you had great seats at what you very affectionately call the ASU Activity Center,
the Activity Center
used to be called before they got the sponsorship.
Yeah, I don't know the actual name of what bank it is anymore.
It's Desert Financial,
Financial,
yeah,
okay.
which is so they called it the bank when it was Wells Fargo Arena, but now it's just technically the credit union.
Yeah, the credit union. Okay, that's fair. I call it the Activity Center, so we're just going to stick to that.
That's
so
fine.
On Saturday after the USC game, I had a friend that said, I hadn't seen it in a while, and he's like, hey, let's see if there are tickets available. Well, I mean, let's be honest, it's ASU and they're terrible. And this was before they beat UCLA, which was the worst 3 overtime game in the history of basketball.
Awful loss for UCLA.
Awful. So I'm looking around, and there were 2 tickets in the 5th row near the basket where Arizona was shooting in the first half and defending in the second half. And they were like $100 each. And I was like, well, I mean, to see a top 5 team in the country, yeah, I'm going to do that. So I bought them. And I mean, it was unbelievable. You're sitting close enough, you could you could hear what they were talking about on the court. You can hear Bobby Hurley whining, even though it was across the court. And the one thing that came away, and we're going to talk about this not only in our buy and sell segment, but with our guest, Matt Muehlebach, who's one of our favorites coming on the show a little bit later, Pac-12 analyst, Mr. Triple-Double, Arizona legend.
Oh, you're going to keep reminding me. I got that trivia question wrong.
Forever his nickname on Wildcat Country.
Slam dunk, and I blew it.
Mr. Triple-Double. So, the one thing about this team, they're cocky, Shane. They are cocky. I mean, these guys, Ben Matherin is playing defense in the second half. I mean, Arizona's up by like 15. These guys to my left, who are like a few rows lower than me, are talking to him, and he's like, yeah, and he's like waving to him and smiling, like having a conversation.
U of A fans or ASU?
U of A fans. Oh, U of A fans. Yeah.
Okay.
Krisa, I mean, is obnoxious as king, and we knew it, but like when you see it in person, Dalen Terry was on a mission.
Oh yeah,
on Monday night.
Did you see him stomping on the ASU logo, Clarence Farmer style, after the game?
Did he not get recruited by Bobby, or what was going on there?
Well, yeah, I think he had the option, and he chose Tucson, which was was a wise choice.
That's sure, but like this dude was like hot, just mad. I mean, he was all over the place. So it was really an interesting atmosphere. I was not impressed with the crowd. I mean, the upper deck was mostly empty. I mean, it really.
What was the ratio of ASU to U of A fans there?
So I thought U of A would have more, but you were right. I think it was like probably 60-40, 70-30-ish. Okay. I mean, fine. U of A fans got loud and the chants got loud, but when ASU started on that like 14-1 run,
yeah,
it got a little.
What were you thinking at that point in the game?
Can I cuss on the podcast or no? I won't. That's crap. Fine. Oh
okay.
crap.
That's fine.
Yeah. Oh crap.
I think we got it.
Yeah. I was a little, I wasn't thrilled, but the one thing about it is they didn't panic. And see where I think ASU went wrong, and obviously we'll talk more about this buy or sell, but ASU was D'ing them up really impressive early, and they were slowing the game down. Then ASU was like, oh, we hit 4 threes in a row, so we're just going to keep shooting threes, and they sped up Arizona, and that's absolutely the wrong
They
strategy.
played hero ball. It's kind of like maybe, I was at the game 5 of the NBA Finals, the Suns and Bucks, and the Suns were up 16 after the first quarter.
Yep.
But they didn't do it playing their style of basketball. It was all hero ball, ISO, 3-point shots that weren't going to keep following the rest of the game. And the Bucks came back and beat them, kind of the same way that the U of A came back and beat ASU. I think also ASU just ran out of gas. You played a 55-minute game 2 nights earlier. You're emotionally spent. It's a lot of frustration off your shoulders because ASU's had a frustrating season in a number of ways. And I think that carries over the first few minutes, but then, talent and just wins out eventually. And ASU just couldn't keep up. And they
couldn't.
Yeah. And as good as a defensive team as ASU has, they weren't able to keep up with the Wildcats.
But Shane, the swag on this team. And I mean, all right, can we get into buy or sell? Let's
do it. Yeah.
Right, let's go. All right. So this is buy or sell, brought to you by our awesome sponsor, Backcourt Marketing. All right. Number one, Shane, I'm going to switch this up on you. This team's cockiness is a concern. I think that they play too loose at times, which works against them, hence the 20 turnovers against ASU. Would you agree and buy or sell that statement?
In a vacuum, I would buy it because I like teams that have a little bit of humility, but I just think this is who these guys are. So I'm going to sell it. I think that cockiness, that looseness they play with, first of all, I think it comes from Tommy Lloyd. I think it comes straight down from him. I mean, don't get me wrong. Kirk Kriisa is who he is, regardless of Tommy Lloyd.
Sure.
But I think it comes largely from him. And I think it's that kind of looseness that allowed them to rally, and this is the first time they've been behind by a lot early in the game.
Right.
You think back there's multiple examples, including the Tennessee game, which I know they didn't win, but they came all the way back and were in that game at the end. They had no business. And I think that start was even worse than the ASU start was.
It was.
So I think they are who they are. And I think if you tell this team, tone down the swagger, tone down the trash talking, you take away their identity. And for better or worse, maybe it's going to be, ultimately bite them in the butt at the worst time in the NCAA tournament. I don't know, but this is who this team is. They talk trash, they play loose, they do some dumb things from time to time because that's part of who they are, but usually they make up for it and then some with just a ridiculous amount of talent and size. And they like each other too. It's not everyone playing for themselves. They play together as a unit. They're cocky together. And so that for that reason, I think I'm okay with it.
Yeah. And the other thing is, and I know we're going to talk about the women's team more in our last segment where we're making picks and such. These two teams that we have that are both in the top 10, they both like playing with the players enjoy playing with each other. You can see the camaraderie on the women's team and you can see the camaraderie on the men's team. Like these guys, it was apparent, and it was a totally different experience for me in Tempe watching this compared to watching on TV, because you can see, like, as you saw when you saw them at the game in Tucson, these guys really enjoy, they feed off each other. Kyer comes in the game for Kirk Kriisa. They rally together. That these 8 guys that are playing together just really mesh well. Now, I mean, the end of the game was a debacle. I want to change my statement about Noel and Adama Ball, because Adama Ball needs to put on some weight. He is really skinny.
Don't worry about worry about the garbage time. I mean, they should have won the game.
They blew the cover. Now I didn't have it, but they blew the cover.
What was it? Was it? I thought it was 11.
It was anywhere between 14 and a half and 11 and a half, depending on when you got it.
So they did blow it. So that could be on Scott Van Pelt's bad beat, because they were up like 20 with a minute to go.
Yeah, they were up like 28 in the second half.
Terry had the technical, and then they had a couple meaningless shots at the end. That's why you don't gamble, because the score did not indicate just how much of a beatdown it was.
No, it was a complete and utter ass kicking in the second half. All right, so number 2, buy or sell. Shane, let's stop kidding around. This Arizona team is Final Four level good. Buy or sell.
So Casey Jacobson called the game, the ASU game. He called the one previously against USC as well. Big fan of his commentary.
Yes,
I think he's fantastic, and I put it out on Twitter, and a lot of people seem to agree.
He will be a future guest on the.
Would love
podcast.
to have him on. Absolutely, hopefully before the Pac-12 tournament. So he had a checklist he put out during the game. You probably didn't see it. You were at the game. You didn't see it. He had a Final Four checklist. What makes a Final Four team?
Okay.
4 pieces of criteria. Great guard play. Arizona has that, no doubt. And Ted Robinson mentioned that last week, with point guard specifically. And Kirk Kriisa has his moments, but he's still pretty good. And then, of course, having Ben Mathurin in the backcourt as well.
Sure.
A top 20 Ken Palm defense. which Arizona has. They are
Yep.
currently, last time I checked, and we're recording this Tuesday night, they are number 8 in KenPom on defense. Each of the last 10 NCAA champions were in the top 20.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Number 3, you have to have at least one first-round NBA draft pick, future draft pick, which they do.
Yeah, they have.
Every mock draft I've seen has Matherin going top 10, and it'll be probably more than him when it's all said and done. Maybe not next season, but the year after that. The last one is the only one where not quite certain in terms of Arizona, and that's experience. Now, they don't have, outside of Justin Kier, they don't have a senior. They don't have a senior starting on this roster, but every guy on that roster has playing experience at the college level, and significant playing experience, if only for last season. So it's not like a bunch of one and done freshmen coming in. So I think they check, I would say, like 3.5 out of those 4 boxes. Yeah. So, a long-winded way to say I'm absolutely buying that. I think that they're in the top 20 in offense and defense in KenPom, almost in the top 10. Gonzaga's the only team in the top 10 in both, but Arizona, I think, is like number 11 on offense. So they're almost right there. So, and I think we've learned, everyone was thinking the sky is falling, or a lot of fans were, after that you lost at UCLA. Oh, they're really not that good. Who have they really beaten? You go down that rabbit hole. This team is legit. We've seen that. We've seen them adjust to the adjustments. Tommy Lloyd's made some very bold decisions, especially late in the game, and I'm excited to talk to Matt Muehlebach about that. So absolutely buy. They, like we say, Eric, the NCAA tournament's a total crapshoot, but are they capable of getting to the Final Four all day? Yes.
Yeah, I think so too. This team just has a special aura about them. And the last Arizona team that was really good was that 2018 team, which won the Pac-12 and won the Pac-12 tournament, and they got smoked by Buffalo. Mm-hmm. But the one thing to remember, and I didn't think about this till earlier today, that team went to the Bahamas earlier, and that was the DeAndre Ayton team.
Yep.
And they lost 3 games in 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
Arizona has played, I don't know how many games they played to this point offhand, and they have lost 2 games, and we're in mid-February. And I think about that.
And their schedule, as grueling as it's been, it's only going to get more so.
Yeah.
Including the rescheduled game at USC on March 1st at the end of their schedule.
Right, so let's talk about that. All right. So number 3 in buy or sell, from February 3rd through March 5th, Arizona plays 10 games, a 25-day span. Are you concerned about fatigue, buy or sell?
A buy. Yeah, I'll buy that, especially with the 8-man rotation. Although our guy Blair Willis put out an interesting stat that none of Arizona's players played more than 35 minutes in any of those last 3. I believe it was any of the last 3 games, which, still most of the game, but still no one's having to go 40. They're mixing it up with just those 8 guys as well as they possibly can. And they're able to do that because all 3 of their guys off the bench, Justin Kier, Umar Ballo, and Pelle Larsson, are all making big contributions. Ballo's been fantastic. Pelle Larsson maybe had his best game in an Arizona uniform.
Definitely was. Guy was awesome from behind the. That was the Pelle Larsson I expected to see,
and gave him a spark in the first half and got them back in the game. So there's no filler in there. There's no guy who's just there to absorb fouls. So, but yes, in terms of fatigue, not only because it's a grueling schedule, but because they do have that lack of depth now that Kim Aiken is, I'm conceivably not playing the rest of the season. We don't know, but probably I would guess not at this point. Yeah, it does concern me. So I will buy that. I do think there's going to be some potential pitfalls along the way for sure.
Okay, fair. So I wonder, we'll talk to Matt Muehlebach about this. Will Arizona lose? How many more games will they lose before March? We'll find out from him what
Washington
thinks.
State game is going to be tough. They're very good defense.
We will make our predictions. I will look into my crystal ball. All right. Yes, I figured you didn't want to hear that.
I want to jump the gun.
Okay, number 4, the most valuable player on Arizona is not Ben Matherin, buy or sell. And I'm not giving you another. You can chime in if you'd like as to who it is, if not Ben.
I'll sell it. It is nice though that Arizona now has 3 different guys who have been Pac-12 Player of the Week, including the guy who I still didn't think was 100%, but looked great, Azuolas Tubelis.
Oh, he was great.
And there were several guys that could have been Pac-12 Player of the Week just from Arizona, and they picked Tubelis, which is fine. But he was fantastic. Arizona definitely is different offensively, especially when he's on the court. So, but Ben Matherin, I think, is still the most likely guy to take over a game late, in the NCAA tournament, when you need, you're playing a great team. I think he's the guy who's most likely to go off for 30, and he's capable of doing it any given night. He doesn't have to, and I'm thrilled he doesn't have to, but we've seen it already. I think he's due for another big game. He hasn't really had a huge game in a while. He's been good.
He was great last night. He was great against ASU. Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
But no, I think Matherin is the guy.
So I'm going to sell this, and I know this is not going to be a popular opinion, but let me tell you why I'm going to sell it. I think Arizona has the most valuable component to Arizona is their size, and it's Tubelis, Koloko, and Ballo. Those three guys will be the difference from Arizona winning game when Arizona needs to win games in the tournament. And we saw that because on last night against ASU, 14-1, we saw the game start that way. The Wildcats went inside, and Koloko and Tubelis, especially in the first half, made a significant impact. They picked up fouls on the other team's bigs. Koloko got 2 in the first 10, 11 minutes, had to sit out the remaining 9 minutes. Ballo came in, had a double-double last night. I mean, they almost had 3 players against ASU with double doubles.
It's really amazing. I'm sorry, Eric. I just want to say they don't miss a beat when Koloko goes out and Ballo comes in. They don't skip a beat. They're not the same guy, but you just look at their stats. You think that they're just two beasts down there. And when they're both on the court at the same time defensively, it's a nightmare.
I think, Shane, that Arizona had twice as many rebounds as ASU. And as good as Ben Matherin is, you can, when he's not in the game, and as we saw at the end of the UCLA game, he wasn't in the game. Yeah. Obviously, Tommy Lloyd, if he was your MVP, you're not taking him out of the game. Arizona was going to win that game with size, and they did. I mean, that triple towers, I guess, Tubelis and Koloko and Ballo, it's significant. And other teams outside of Gonzaga, who's going to be able to match up with that in the tournament? That's
a fair point. That's a fair point. I guess you're just asking me who's the best guy on the team. Who's the guy who's projected to be a lottery pick? It's Ben Matherin, but I totally get your point.
Best player. Yeah. But is he the MVP?
MVP. That's 2 different questions. I understand what you're saying.
All right. Number 5. This is when you posed on Twitter. I thought it was an excellent question.
Thank you.
So this week it was great. I mean, most of the stuff you post on Twitter is excellent, for the most part. Yep. Yeah. Especially when it's about me and getting 5-0, right? That was the best. Thank you. Number 5, buy or sell. Arizona delivered a combined 47,206 fans in the 4-game sweep at McHale, men and women combined. Will Arizona football, or I'm going to say that Arizona football will deliver more than that 47,200 number for at least one game this season. Are you buying or selling that?
I feel like I'm cheating a little bit because I will buy it.
Okay.
Specifically because the Territorial Cup game is in Tucson this season. And, you think back to 2016, it was a great upset win for Arizona, but they were terrible going into that game. No momentum. And yet they still turned out 50,000 fans for that game. And some of those were in maroon and gold, but still, vast majority were Arizona fans. So fans still show up for that game. So if nothing else, I think that they'll surpass that attendance number. And a good chance, maybe there's going to be a bowl game on the line at that point. It's so hard to say. Maybe the 5 and 6.
You're missing one. Come on, let's before we get to ASU, USC and Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams. It's homecoming. It's USC. I mean, that game will have 50,000 plus in the stands. I don't care how bad Arizona is. It's USC. Yeah. That USC team is going to be really good, and to make it your homecoming, I think it's October 29th. That game will have 50,000 plus. Oregon plays in Arizona earlier in the season. You have Mississippi State even before that. And then you have ASU. I mean, you're going to have at least 2 games, if not 3 or 4, with 50,000 plus.
I want to say the 2016 game against USC, if I remember right, just looked like the stadium was half full. So I don't know necessarily if USC is going to be a draw just because they're USC. Well, but I think homecoming. I know. Well, still, I mean, how many fans do they have at homecoming last?
That was the one game I missed, so I can't tell you. That was the one game they won that I wasn't there.
But I know there were a lot of empty seats for that. Yeah, so okay. I'm not trying to be pessimistic about it. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that I feel like I kind of have the safety of knowing they're playing ASU at home, so it's easier for me to answer that. If they didn't, I would probably sell it because I think it's going to take a while for this. As much as it's going to take a while for this program to turn around, it's going to take a while for the fans to really come back and decide that buying a ticket and going to an 8 p.m. start is worth it.
Let me say this. This is also the best Arizona home football schedule in a long time. I mean, just good. Yeah, when you look at Mississippi State, North Dakota State, Oregon, USC, ASU, and I don't even know the other 2 teams. I think it's Washington State is one of them.
Colorado would have to be the other.
Colorado would be the other one, right? Yeah. I mean, that is a powerhouse schedule. That is probably, if you're looking at attractive opponents, that's got to be up there in the top 20 in America next year. As far as that's why I renewed my season ticket as soon as I got the email. So
you're great. You're a diehard. You're there.
I just want to see a win, Shane. I haven't seen a win in person in a long time.
Well, hey, at least you got to see the Wildcats win.
I know. And
you know what? I'll say this, Eric, you went to the better ASU game because you were kind enough to give me your tickets to the game in Tucson. That was like 2 hours in a dentist chair. I'm sorry. I mean, it was a great environment and all that, but that was a tough game to watch. It was stressful for a good 35 of the 40 minutes.
Yeah.
The one you went to, despite the way it started, was the one you wanted to go to in terms of ASU.
Yeah, once Arizona pulled ahead towards the end of the first half, I know ASU got a couple of late baskets because Kirk Kriisa just made some careless turnovers. Never really concerned. And then in the second half, it was Dunk City. I mean, it was unbelievable.
That stretch where I think Koloko had back-to-back dunks and then Terry on the fast break. I mean, that was like the best, maybe like the best minute or 2 minutes of Arizona basketball I've seen in a long time.
I mean, for me to jump out of my chair, and it was a very uncomfortable chair, by the way. That's no surprise to the activity center. All right. So I had this is my bonus question. You don't know what this is.
No.
I had a friend, an ASU friend, say confidently over text message that ASU next year should handle Arizona easily, but then in future years, it shouldn't. It's more of a concern when it comes to football. I think Arizona is going to beat ASU, and I'm very confident in that prediction. And I will double, triple, quadruple, and even more so go down on that prediction as we go along here. Buy or sell. Arizona is going to beat ASU at home in 2022.
I have to answer this in February.
Right. I mean, you could change it, but I'm just going to, as of right now, how you're feeling.
Gosh, I feel better about the game. I did make a bold prediction that I sort of regretted that Arizona will be favored in that game next season. And I think that's a possibility.
Yeah.
And ASU's offseason has kind of gone the way we expected, with the exception of possibly Herm Edwards still being there.
Yeah.
And they did lose quite a few players. They did, however, they've done pretty well in the transfer portal, surprisingly. Now we'll have to wait and see, if there's more fallout from all the coaches leaving. But gosh, you know what? I usually pick against U of A just because I feel better about it, and no one can talk trash to me and all that. I'm going to sell it for now. But could you at least ask me like in April or May and come back to me on this? But I don't think it's going to be a blow. Is ASU going to handle Arizona? I don't think so. I think they're, health permitting, Arizona is going to be much improved from last season. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go to a bowl game, but much improved is like, 4 or 5 wins. But I'm not bold enough to predict Arizona's going to win that game just yet.
Arizona's going to win that game, Shane. If Jaden Delore is healthy, I mean, as long as there's not massive injuries, and there's you can't. It's hard to predict. Arizona will win that game.
All right, Eric. I'll do for you then. I will do for you then what I did for you last week, or I will post this clip on Twitter.
Thank you.
After the game, I will save it and I will post it, and I will say you were right. I hope, just like the 5-0 prediction, I'm hoping you're right about this. I'm not nearly as brave as you are, Eric.
I feel great about it. I don't know how many games Arizona's going to win. I'm not going to tell you their other wins right now. Arizona's going to beat ASU the day after Thanksgiving. I'm just telling you that. Coming up next, Matt Muehlebach, Mr. Triple Double. That's what we will call him over and over, just because of the best trivia question in Wildcat Country history. Coming up here on Wildcat Country, powered by Backcourt Marketing. Shane, he is arguably the most entertaining guest we've had on the podcast. He is always full of great sound bites and knowledge. And not only that, but he is the answer to the best trivia question ever posed on Wildcat Country. Mr. Triple Double, Matt Muehlebach, joining us, who is also a Pac-12 Network analyst. Matt, always great to talk to you. My first question is, this Arizona team with 2 losses, and now we're in mid-February, is the best Arizona team since fill in the blank.
2014.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying 14's better, but it's it's definitely the best team since 14. I guess 14 and 15 were almost the same team. I think they exchanged. Stanley Johnson came in, and it was who left? It was
Aaron Gordon left, and Stanley Johnson basically took his place, and that was the TJ McConnell era.
It was, yeah. And I think 14 was better because I think Aaron Gordon was one of the best defensive players ever in Arizona history.
Yeah.
I just thought it
Wow.
was incredible. The game where they played, actually, it's interesting thinking about Gonzaga now. But the game they played, I think they played Gonzaga in the second round. Aaron Gordon, like, to me, during that was one of the best games I've ever seen an Arizona player play. He was tremendous. And so I think it's the best team since then. I think arguably they're right now, I would say they're as good or better than that team. Still a ways to go, though.
So, Matt, and thanks again for joining us. It's been a little while since we chatted and a lot more to talk about. Of the 3 victories Arizona put together in the last few days, and I've rewatched clips from all 3 over the last several. It's been a lot of fun. Which of those 3 games impressed you the most and why?
Wow. Great question. I think UCLA. I think it was, for me, UCLA didn't have to win that game as much as Arizona had to win that game. And because they had just lost to them 9 days earlier, it felt for me like if they lose that game, there's a question mark whether they can beat, a top 5 team and whether they're a top 5 team. So, yeah, what was it, 14-1 last night against ASU? It was crazy that they came back that fast. I couldn't believe it. And SC was really impressive from the standpoint of, hey, that's a typical hangover game against a really good, big physical team who, they obviously gave Arizona its best shot, and Arizona had spent a lot of energy and emotion on Thursday. And so that was impressive from that standpoint. But I just think because of the moment and how big that game was on Thursday, to me, that was the most impressive.
Talking about the UCLA game, Matt, Tommy Lloyd made a very unconventional move at the end of that game by sitting both Ben Mathurin and Azuolas Tubelis and letting those his 2 bigs play it out at the end because he knew the team really needed defense. What were you thinking when you're watching that decision and that, like, realizing, hey, those, our 2 leading scorers aren't on the court? And do you think that's a decision that some coaches maybe wouldn't have had the guts to make in that situation?
Okay, so I'm gonna tell you what I was. My answer is going to be a little bit interesting, or at least I hope it is. I was in studio that night, and we were watching the end of that game, like 2 minutes before we had to go on air, or I think we had to go back on air for something. So I'm watching it out of the corner of my eye. I'm trying to, concentrate on the other game that was ending on the Pac-12 network. And it was funny because we talked about that, like, right away. We were like, wow, we're like, I was like, where's Mathurin? Did he get hurt? Was something wrong with him? And so it was this weird situation. And yeah, it did surprise me. And because Ben's been a very good defender, but he did that in the SC game, I think, as well. One of those last 2 or 3 possessions. And he put both Koloko and Ballo in there at the same time in that game. And it's risky, but, I just think the thing about him is he doesn't seem to, pressure doesn't affect him, Tommy Lloyd. He seems very loose about, games like this, and he doesn't really, like, get excited about the pressure. And so I don't think I like, for me, yeah, I think a lot of first-time coaches would worry about, hey, what's the media going to say, or someone going to say something about me? And he had no problem with it.
All right. So one thing that concerns me, Matt, and Shane and I talked about this earlier in the show. Arizona, I was sitting, pretty close last night in Tempe at the activity center, as I like to call it. And they're cocky. I mean, they're really, really cocky. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
The team was, or the fans were?
Oh, the team. Oh, on
Okay.
the court. I mean, Kreisa and Mathurin talking to fans while he's playing defense, and Dalen Terry with the hand gestures. And I mean, these guys are like, this was like watching a mini Miami in the early 90s play football. It was unbelievable last night.
That's a really interesting observation because, you go back to, like, UCLA, Kreisa throwing the ball into the stands. And, some of kissing the crowd every time he makes a 3. And I mean, look, yeah, do they sometimes maybe partially cross the line, but I love it. Like, it's like, why not? Like, this is a fun game. And to me, when I think about their secret sauce, when I think of Arizona's secret sauce, I think number one, like, look, they have talent. Like, let's just call it what it is. They have incredible talent. They have playmakers. They have, they have really good players. But the other secret sauce is their height, right? It's their size and their length. Terry at the 3, Matherin's a 2 guard. That's crazy. Terry at the 3 is as big as ASU's 4 and 5 man.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously you bring in the other 3 bigs. That's the second piece. But I think their secret sauce is their spirit, their joy, and how they play, and how they do play a little bit. They don't keep it close to the vest. They have fun with it. They play very confidently. I mean, I'm not going to go as far as to say they're the Fab Five. Like, that was a different thing at the time. But they have fun and they let it go. And, like I said, Kriisa, in a good way, I'm going to say this in a very positive way, he's a little crazy. Like, but I think of another guy that's a little crazy in the pros, Draymond Green.
Mm-hmm.
He's crazy.
Yep.
He's also the edge for that team. Like, he's the edge for the Warrior team. And I think when you have an edge like that, that's a really cool thing. And you know what? It's not just Kriisa that has it. I think you made that observation just now. It's Kriisa, it's Terry, it's a bunch of them. And I think the joy they play with, like I said, is their secret sauce.
Yeah, in the second half, there were a couple of U of A fans that were like right near behind the basket, and Matherin's talking to them while he's trying to play defense. I mean, they're like, "Come on, Ben, next time you got to do a windmill." It was really interesting things that you see just because I happen to get lucky, get down low. Okay, one thing that has been brought up a lot, and I know a lot of people don't like to talk about this, but I figure you'll give us a straight answer. Sean Miller's style with this team. If Sean Miller was still coaching this team, I'm going to say I don't think Arizona only has 2 losses. I don't think Miller plays the run and gun style that this team loves to play. Would you agree with that statement, or just any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's could be a fair statement. I'll say this: if Miller's the coach, I don't think James Akinjo leaves, and I think that what happens between him and Kriisa, like last year, you could see there was a little tension about who wanted to play the point guard position. And, it was clearly Akinjo. So I don't think he leaves. I wonder if some of the other guys, like, this is something I thought about last night watching that team, and, how incredibly deep and talented they are. Umar Ballo could probably start on 4 or 5, maybe more Pac-12 teams. I mean, that's how good, obviously, he is.
Yeah.
But think about the guys that left Arizona, what that team would actually be if you just took a team of Arizona transfers from last year. So you've got Akinjo. Now, Baker, I think, got hurt and this year, but just think of Akinjo, Baker.
Daniel Bacho.
That's right. Ira Lee, Jordan Brown. I think Jordan Brown's averaging 15 or 16 at like Louisiana or something. Oh, Terrell Brown Jr.
Yep.
The MVP. He might be the player of the year in the Pac-12. Are you kidding me? He was on Arizona's team last year. He was what, 7th or 8th man.
Mm-hmm.
That team alone could probably finish like in the top half of the Pac-12. So the talent that Sean had brought, I think, is fascinating. And maybe to some degree, fit his style. I think Akinjo fit Sean's style, and I think Kriisa fits Tommy Lloyd's style.
So this Arizona team, Matt, has been or is where you've been before as a player. That going into February, the home stretch now, the last half of the Pac-12 schedule, they've got a target on their back. They're rolling. They're one of the top 5 teams in the country. Everyone's going to be gunning for them, starting with Washington State on Thursday. How did you handle that pressure? How did Coach Olson, recommend to you guys handling that pressure, being, getting every team's best shot down the stretch?
Well, going back to what I was saying about, the secret sauce, that team that we had in '88 was incredibly fun. I mean, we had personalities up and down the roster. And so we had a lot of fun with different things. You remember that was the Gumbies back then, that had fun with the guys that were coming off the bench and playing the scout team even was, had a role. And, we had, like I said, Kreese is a little crazy. We had some crazy guys. Tom Tolbert's a little crazy. We just had some fun guys. Kerr was incredible. That guy, and he's demonstrated over time and time and time in his career where, like, I've always told this story. My dog's whining back here, so I'm trying to get her to stop.
No worries.
But so the story that we were in the Alaska shootout going to play Syracuse, and like I was nervous and I knew I probably wouldn't play a lot. He was watching the Arizona State football game on a TV that was this big in the back of the bus. So he was like, it was weird. Like that team did not have nerves. And it was because we were so much fun and everybody had a blast. And we ran with it. We embraced every piece of being the number one team in the country when we were. And I feel like this team has a lot of that in them.
So, Matt, Arizona's about to head to Washington, that famous trip. You got to fly into Spokane, you make the drive to Pullman. It's not fun. I'm sure these guys are tired too. Number one, what's that trip like from your recollection? And then number two, what are the challenges Washington State really imposes on Arizona, because they might be the best defensive team they've seen to this point this season?
So a couple of things. One, I'll say this, like I've done a bunch of games in Pullman, and I've played there 4 times. I love Pullman. Like I could totally see myself in another life, like going to Washington State. I really loved it. I love their arena. I love the people there, and it's a really cool spot. But I also will say this, when you go from Tucson and it's 65, 70 right now and sunny, it almost is like the Bermuda Triangle. Like you go out there and it's hard to get there. It's easier now because they'll fly their own plane. But, we had some crazy trips where we flew into, Seattle. And then we finally figured out, the deal is you finally figure out you fly into Spokane and then you drive from Spokane. Luke figured that out. But it took some bad trips, but it's long travel. It's hard. And a lot of times you get there and you feel kind of like your legs are a little dead. Your energy can sometimes get really sapped, and it's overcast, it's snowing or sleeting or raining this time of year. And I'm just telling you, it is hard. You get in that gym, that arena, Beasley Coliseum, I should say. And sometimes you're sapped in there, and it's not because anything that they did or anything like that, but it's a really tough trip. And so that's number one. Number two, Washington State is really good, and they're not even close to where they could be. But the crazy thing, I was looking up this the other day. I would think that the 2 best defensive teams in the conference are for sure Arizona and UCLA. Like 1-2 right there. I would bet without even looking at anything that SC was 3rd, and I was 100% wrong. In the Ken Palm stats, SC was, I can't remember the exact number, but they were significant. They were probably 20, 30 points or places down. Washington State was like the 21st best defensive team in the country, and it shocked me, or it surprised me, I should say. But, I saw them live. I did the ASU Washington State game when it was like 18-10 at halftime. And, granted at that time, I'm thinking, well, this is ASU and a lot of new guys, they're missing shots. But part of that was just Washington State. They really defend. They get after you. Kyle Smith, he calls it nerd ball. And he is a total, money ball, nerd ball, metrics guy. And he charts everything. Like everybody charts deflections, but like he charts who's the first guy to dive on the loose ball. And they have a stat that says like 80% of the time, the first guy to dive gets the ball. That team gets it. And so they really defend. They have F.A. Abagidi, who has an NBA body. He's a sophomore. He's 6'9", 6'10". He may be the best athlete in the whole conference. Like he's that good. Mohamed Gay is a freshman, even longer, taller, and bigger. So they just present some really tough problems defensively where they struggle sometimes on the offensive end. And so we could see a game that we haven't seen in a while. If both teams can really impose their will, you could have a game that's incredibly low scoring, especially for Arizona, who we know wants to score 80 every time.
Unfortunately, we've learned that they can win ugly, as we saw.
Yeah.
I mean, the USC game, I would say, was probably a good example of that. So
Great point. Totally.
Yeah. So my last question for you, Matt, and thanks again for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Always love it.
The only concern I have about this team right now is their outside shooting. And I know that they're a little streaky. They have guys who can make threes, but if they're not consistent, is that a concern of yours going forward and maybe even looking ahead to the NCAA tournament?
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that's, a lot of teams will say that, or historically look at that, like teams that lose in the tournament, especially high seeds that lose to low seeds. There's a train wreck of games where they're 4 of 26 from 3 and, 5 of 32 and whatever it is. In fact, I was hanging out this weekend. The guy I played with, one of my best friends, Matt Muehlebach, came in town for both UCLA and both USC. It was awesome hanging out with him. Luke was here. We saw Luke Walton. John Ash was hanging out with him. Ricky Anderson was in town. And Matt and I were talking on Saturday night after our game about, I think like his last game, he had a really, bad game for him and they lost. I had a very average game. We can go down the line of like guys that lost their last game, and it's usually, that tournament, like the difference is when the Warriors, like I said, the Warriors earlier, when they have a horrible game in the playoffs, they have the best of 7. And so they come back the next day and they light it up and then they win, 4-1. And so that's the tough part, is we don't have that. And as college players. And so I think for me, I'll say this, like the last point I'll make on this, the one thing that you can do to avoid that is not settling for threes. And I thought that the SC game and the Arizona State game, and I haven't even looked at the stats yet on Kerr Kreese on that, but I thought his shot selection changed dramatically for both games. Like he really, really was taking really good shots. And you could make the argument he was really hunting shots in those UCLA, the first one and the second one. And maybe took a couple that were, questionable, but again, that's just part of how they play, right? They want to play free within the framework that they have. But I thought he was really good about taking good shots. And if I go back to the Arizona State game last night, when they got down, what they did is they just pounded it inside. And they just said, look, we're not going to settle. This is probably the biggest thing in the NCAA tournament that happens to teams. I've been in it, and it's really difficult, is you can panic really quickly. And they did not panic last night. And that was a great sign. And if they ever get in that again in the tournament, or if something like that happens, you get down 5 or 10 or 12, they can point to that and say, look, guys, calm down. We've been through this. Go back to the Arizona State game and just don't panic. Don't settle for threes. It's when you're rolling, let them fly. So I think they've maybe learned a couple lessons, but that's always a concern, right? With the one game and out.
Last one for me, Matt. What's very interesting is the parallels between your freshman year team in 87-88 and this team. You guys lost your last regular season game on February 4th and then went on a winning streak for almost 2 months before the Oklahoma game in the Final Four. So just looking ahead at this team, now they have a stretch here before the end of the regular season, 10 games in 25 days. I would say it's unlikely they're going to run the table in that particular span. But what's your outlook on this team before the tournament? Do you see them losing multiple games? Do you think it's maybe one game, or do you think they have a pretty good chance to run the table before the big dance?
Great question. I'm kind of with you. I think because it's that many games in a short span, I could see them, call it stubbing their toe or whatever, but losing a couple. That SC game, whenever that is, I know it's like, isn't it now like March 1st, like right?
March 1st. Yep.
That's going to be a tough one on a whatever Monday or Tuesday. I would love to see the stat. Now, Arizona beat this last night. I'd love to see the stat of teams that play on the road, like on a Tuesday. Like it's kind of it's not good. Like SC went to Stanford and just didn't even they had a really rough time. And it's happened to a number of teams. I think it just happened to UCLA. Or no, they actually play tonight. But it happened to a couple other teams. But I think they could lose once or twice. And like I said, that we just talked about it with Shane, that the Washington State game is not going to be easy in 2 days. So I could see a couple, but I don't see much more than that. I mean, when you're down 14-1 to your rival on the road and you win you're up 20, with a couple minutes to go. I mean, this team has firepower. They have unbelievable firepower. And so I don't see more than a couple. But I will say this too, the Pac-12 tournament, I mean, that could be a blast this year.
Oh, yeah.
Vegas, You got SC, you got the chance of UCLA, Arizona. You got teams like
Oregon.
Yeah, Oregon, who's a sleeper right now. And they're talented, and they got an unbelievable coach. Even those quarterfinal games could be ridiculously good. But the semis and the finals, if Arizona gets that far, we all know, McHale North, it's not, well, that's McHale, in Vegas, it becomes McHale North at T-Mobile Center, T-Mobile Arena. That could be crazy. That could be really fun.
Well, Matt, as always, we really appreciate you joining Shane and I, and look forward to having you on before the big dance to get more analysis. But the parallels between the 87-88 team and this one, I never really thought about it until this conversation. There are a lot, and it's something to think about going forward. And I really hope this team can fare as well as you guys did in your freshman year.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. There's a lot of parallels. It's very true.
Well, great to talk to our buddy Matt Muehlebach. Always has a lot to say. And Shane, I mean, he's as confident. When you look at the parallels of that 87-88 team in the Final Four, only 2 losses. I mean, it's making me feel pretty darn good about this Wildcats team.
I like what Matt said, and Matt's always a great guest. And I feel like we're just chatting. It's not like a Q&A session. We're just, he's telling us about old times and comparing him to now. What he said about the swagger and the confidence and the looseness that team that went to the Final Four in 1988 had, and comparing it to this team, and the fact that you need someone a little crazy, a little off his rocker, and Kirk Reese is definitely, he's cocky, but he's also, I don't know if you caught the end of the USC game, because he threw the ball into the Zona Zoo after the UCLA game. I saw the camera cut away, and someone who was at the game let me know. But it looked like he was about to throw the ball into the student section again, and someone from USC was watching him and went over and put his hand over the ball so he couldn't do it. I didn't see what happened after that because it cut away to the coaches shaking hands or whatever. But
interesting.
Yeah, but he dude's crazy. But for better or worse, he is who he is.
One thing we did not talk about that I would like to discuss here for a second is what happened on last Thursday night with UCLA's player Mac Etienne, who spit on the fans in the Zona Zoo. Just any thoughts on that? I mean, obviously it's an ugly situation all around.
Yeah, first of all, and I'm going to sound like a curmudgeon, whenever I talk about Bill Walton, but I would like UA fans to knock off the F bombs.
I agree.
Because look, I'm not offended by them, but it's be more creative, be more intelligent than that. I'm tempted to say, you remember, was it back at late 80s, early 90s, Sam Weish, coach of the Bengals. Yes, fans were throwing stuff onto the field, and he gets on the microphone and tells them to stop and says, "You don't live in Cleveland, you live in Cincinnati."
Such a great clip.
This isn't Tempe, this is Tucson. Okay, we could be more clever than that. I don't hate ASU, but I just was thinking about what if Tom Miller got on the mic and said, "This isn't Tempe," but I would like to see them knock that off. So I understand. Right. I don't certainly condone it, but I understand how a player might have reacted that way. With that said, obviously there's no place for that. I didn't realize that it actually constituted assault to spit on someone, but I guess it does.
He did it apparently before halftime, and then going into the half, and then did it again.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was stupid, really stupid.
Yeah, it was.
But yes, I agree 100% with you. One thing we have not talked about as well, the women's team, because they came out against Oregon last Friday, and they took care of business. They stomped them. Yeah,
it was beautiful. Yeah, and in front of a whiteout crowd, a home crowd that I think was the biggest, the second biggest they had. I think the biggest was
NIT
at the NIT final. Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that series, Eric, and being able to have all of those games at home really, I think, it ignited the bond between this team and Adia Barnes and this program and the fans. I remember way back when I covered Arizona in 03-04, the women's basketball team. They were co-Pac-10 champions, very good. They won every home game. They beat a top 10 Stanford team at home. But that game, Eric, against Stanford had maybe 4,000 or 5,000 fans. It just wasn't the same. They made a lot of noise. They were great, but it wasn't the same atmosphere. And to see the fan total being literally doubled from those days is awesome. And then for Arizona to respond and beat two very good teams at home. Oregon State's still very good. Oregon is much improved over the last few weeks. They're going to be probably a high seed in the NCAA tournament. So great to see them take care of business. Great to see other players stepping up. Coy Love had a great game against Oregon State off the bench. Sam Thomas, obviously hitting threes. Shayna Pellington. She wasn't quite as dominant as she had been recently, but then of course, and Kate Reese, obviously being the typically the high scorer for the team, but they sort of do it by committee, and it's been working for them. They've maintained that top 10 ranking that, again, I keep doubting them and they keep winning. I buy Final Four, real tough to do again, but this team has definitely earned a top 10 ranking. And it really is a shame that they don't have a chance to play Stanford at home this season.
So here's a good thing though, Shane. You're right about the Stanford game. That's terrible scheduling by the Pac-12. The one thing about women's basketball that I think they do right in the tournament is the top 16 seeds will host regionals on their home court. And so this is going to be a huge advantage for Arizona. I mean, Arizona losing on their home court seems unlikely at this point, unless they were to play a much better team like a Stanford. So Arizona probably, let's say they were a 2 or a 3 seed, going to play, what is that, a 14 or a 15? And then you're going to play a 6 or a 7 seed likely.
Projected as a 2 seed right now by Charlie Cream at ESPN.
Yeah. I mean, I'm feeling pretty good about projecting them into the Sweet 16. Now, beyond that, who knows? Yeah. But I think the women's team almost with that advantage gives them, that's significant.
And it's great for them to be able to finally, assuming that they get a top 4 seed, which they're very likely to do at this point, to finally be able to host, because last season everything was centralized because of COVID. They didn't get to host those games. And the year before that, they might have been a top 4 seed and the tournament didn't happen. So finally, it'll be fun to see them be able to host one, hope probably 2 NCAA tournament games. And we'll be interesting to see if they get sellouts for that game, like we did for the last game of the WNIT. I wouldn't be surprised to see it.
Wouldn't be either, Shane. It'll be really exciting. So let's keep it going. The men's team is number 4. The women's team is number 6. So now it's time for a 3-game weekend. And let's start with the women, because the women are going to go for the sweep up in Tempe. Well, at least the Wildcat sweep up in Tempe, taking on the Sun Devils. I believe that game is Friday night at 7 p.m. All right, Shane, Wildcat's going to win this game. Number 6, Arizona against unranked ASU. What do you think?
Well, you remember last season, Arizona fell victim to an upset loss to ASU at their last game of the regular season. Yeah, it was. I have a feeling we're going to get a split, and that's because ASU is playing very well. They're playing their best basketball of the season. Jade Lavelle is kind of their Ari McDonald at ASU. Okay. She's had a big season. She's like at a 30-some point game against Oregon State the other day. So that's going to be tough. I mean, Arizona's better. They probably should win both games, but I think we're going to see a split of those 2 games. So I think the home team's going to win both.
Okay. So ASU, since they had a 6-game COVID break, has gone win in overtime against Colorado, lost to Utah at home, lost at Stanford by 28, lost at Oregon by 14. Then they beat Oregon State by 10, and then beat Oregon by 6. Arizona's winning this game, and then Arizona's going to play them again on Sunday, and Arizona's going to win that. So Arizona's going to win both.
Yeah, I just think ASU just is hitting its stride right up. I mean, sweeping the Oregon schools is no small feat, even at home. And Arizona had about as tough a time with the Oregon schools as ASU did. So.
I'm not going on record like I did last week where I was like confident, because this is tough to win back to back. Within 3 days or within 2 days. Arizona's going to sweep this one. When it comes to the men are going up to the Washington schools. The Huskies are playing better. They play them on Saturday. And the Cougs, as Matt Muehlebach said, are pretty darn good. I'm just going to give my prediction first. I feel like, the Cougs could be a trap game, all that, whatnot. Arizona's going to win this game. They're just more talented. And I just don't see how Washington State will have the size to stop them. And I think Arizona crushes Washington. So I think the men, I'm confident in saying they'll go 2-0. The women, at worst, 1-1.
My concern with the Washington State game, and not only is that defense, but the travel, I'm sure they're exhausted. Getting to Pullman is always a pain in the rear end. And Washington State really needs this win. They are squarely, I mean, there's a month to go, but they're squarely in the NCAA tournament bubble, and this game can make or break their chances. I think they're desperate for a win, kind of like Arizona was last week against UCLA. They needed that win.
Okay.
And so that concerns me. I'm going to lean Arizona winning. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be actually more Washington State's kind of game, but I think we've learned that Arizona can win ugly. They can win with defense. They can win with size. I think having Koloko and Ballo at the end of the game is probably something you're going to see again.
Yep.
And if they win that game, they should win in Seattle against Washington. They had a tough time against the Huskies the first time. Terrell Brown looked great again in front of McHale Center fans for the first time. And, he didn't get that opportunity the year before, but I will reluctantly say Arizona will sweep the Washington schools. Okay. I think the women go 1-1. I think the men go 2-0.
Okay, so 3-1 at worst, 4-0 overall. Let's just hope. Please no ASU wins over the women's team. Let's take care of business there. Before we go, want to thank our sponsor, Backcourt Marketing. Always appreciate them supporting the show. Check them out, backcourtmarketing.com, or on Twitter at backcourtmktg. If you or your friends or your family know any businesses that need some social media help, Backcourt Marketing is the place that can help them. So check them out. Once again, backcourtmarketing.com. Want to thank our friend Matt Muehlebach for joining us, Mr. Triple Double. I think that's the 4th time I've said that, maybe the 5th time on the show, and I just can't help myself. Always good to talk to Matt. It's a great source of information and humor, and we always enjoy it. And of course, Shane, great show. Always enjoy it. And next week, much to discuss with a litany of great guests that are on the docket. So for Shane Dale, I am Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, bear down.